The morning it all started, Mia ate half a waffle, laughed at a cartoon, and reached up to Naomi Reeves with both arms the way she always did. Fingers spread wide, like she was trying to hold the whole world. Naomi picked her up. That was the last normal morning in the Shin penthouse for a very long time. Here's the thing about Shin Joon-ho. He ran a $4.2 billion tech firm from the 61st floor of a glass tower in Midtown Manhattan. He made decisions that moved markets. He had 17 people on staff whose entire job was to anticipate what he needed before he knew he needed it. But he did not notice the small things. He didn't notice that Mia always waited by the foyer window at 7:45 a.m. Not for him, but for Naomi. He didn't notice that whenever Mia scraped her knee, she didn't cry until Naomi left the room, because somehow, at 3 years old, she understood that Naomi's presence meant she was safe, and the moment Naomi was gone, she was allowed to fall apart. He didn't notice any of it. So when his sister Ye-rin called him on a Tuesday afternoon and said, "Oppa, I've found someone much more qualified. A proper nanny. Certified. She speaks Korean. The woman you have now, I just don't think she's the right fit for our family." Joon-ho listened. He shouldn't have. Naomi found out on a Wednesday. Not from Joon-ho. From an envelope. A severance check. 2 months. Slid under her door on the staff level of the penthouse like she was a hotel guest who'd overstayed checkout. She stood in the hallway holding it for a long time. Then she folded it, put it in her back pocket, packed her 2 bags, and went to say goodbye to Mia. Mia was in the playroom, stacking foam blocks into a tower. She looked up when Naomi came in, and something in the child's face changed, the way a sky changes right before rain. Not dramatic, just a shift in the light. "You going?" Mia asked. 3 years old. Somehow she already knew. "I have to, baby," Naomi said. Mia picked up 1 more block, placed it carefully on top of the tower. Then she walked over and pressed her face into Naomi's neck and didn't say anything else. Naomi held her for 4 minutes. She counted. Then she left. The new nanny's name was Ms. Park. She arrived Thursday morning with a laminated portfolio of credentials, a calm professional smile, and a rolling suitcase the color of cream. Ye-rin introduced her to the household staff with the kind of authority that made it clear this had been her idea, her choice, her win. Mia stood in the doorway of the playroom, watched. She didn't reach up. By Friday evening, Mia hadn't eaten a full meal. The chef made her favorites. The small triangle kimbap Naomi used to cut for her, the sweet potato soup with the tiniest pinch of cinnamon that Naomi had figured out by accident one afternoon and never told anyone the recipe. Ms. Park served it perfectly. Correct temperature, correct bowl. Mia pushed it away. Not dramatically. She didn't throw it or cry. She just moved the bowl 3 inches to the left and stared at the table. Ms. Park reported this to Ye-rin, not to Joon-ho. That detail will matter later. By Saturday, Joon-ho noticed, but only because he happened to walk through the dining room at the wrong time and saw the untouched plate. "She didn't eat? She's adjusting," Ms. Park said smoothly. "Children go through transitions. It's completely normal." Joon-ho looked at his daughter. Mia looked back at him. Her expression was not angry. It was not sad. It was something harder to read than either of those things. It was the face of someone who had already decided something and was simply waiting for everyone else to catch up. He went back to his office. Sunday was when things got strange. Joon-ho was on a call with his Singapore office. 11 p.m., the city light stretching out below him like a second sky, when his cell phone buzzed with a number he didn't recognize. He ignored it. It buzzed again. He stepped out of the call, answered. Silence on the other end. Then a small sound. Breathing. Then, Naomi, 1 word, 3 syllables. Spoken in the small, careful voice of a child who had figured out how to unlock a phone, scroll through recent contacts, and press call, all by herself, in the dark, after everyone thought she was asleep. Joon-ho stood very still. "Mia," he said slowly, Where are you?" But Mia wasn't talking to him. She was waiting for Naomi to answer. He found her in the hallway outside the kitchen, sitting cross-legged on the floor in her pajamas, his phone pressed to her ear with both hands, eyes closed, concentrating. Like if she just held on long enough, the right voice would come through. Joon-ho sat down on the floor next to her. He didn't take the phone. He just sat there, in his suit, on the marble floor, at 11 p.m., next to his 3-year-old daughter, and waited. After a while, Mia opened her eyes, looked at the phone, looked at him. "She not there," Mia said. "No," Joon-ho said. "She's not." Mia handed him the phone, stood up, walked back to her room. She left him sitting on the floor, alone, holding a phone with a disconnected call on the screen. And for the first time since his wife died, Shin Joon-ho felt something crack open inside his chest that he did not have a word for. He looked at the call log. Mia had tried 7 times. He called Naomi back that night. She didn't answer. He left a voicemail. Short, formal, the only register he knew. "This is Shin Joon-ho. My daughter has been trying to reach you. I'd like to speak with you. Please call back at your convenience." He hung up, stared at the ceiling. At your convenience. Like he was scheduling a vendor meeting. He picked the phone back up and typed a text instead. "Mia hasn't eaten in 3 days. She found your number herself. I think I made a mistake. I'm sorry." He sent it before he could think about what it meant that he'd apologized to someone in writing for the first time in 11 years. Naomi read the text at 6 a.m. the next morning, standing in the kitchen of her sister's apartment in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, wearing socks that didn't match and holding a cup of coffee she hadn't drunk yet. She read it twice. Then she put the phone face down on the counter. Because an apology from Shin Joon-ho, delivered at midnight via text, didn't answer the real question, which was how a man that intelligent had let his sister make a decision that important without asking a single question. And there was something else. Something Naomi hadn't told anyone. Not her sister. Not her former colleague who'd first recommended her for the Shin household. Not a single person. Something she'd found in Mia's room, 3 weeks before she was fired, tucked inside a board book on the bottom shelf. A small envelope with her name on it, handwritten in a script she didn't recognize. She hadn't opened it yet. She didn't know why. She picked the phone back up, typed, "I'll come, but we need to talk, all of it." Sent it. Finished her coffee. Outside, Brooklyn was waking up. Garbage trucks, a neighbor's radio, pigeons on the fire escape. Normal Monday sounds. Inside, Naomi had the quiet feeling of someone walking back towards something they'd been trying to walk away from. Before we get into what happened when Naomi walked back into that penthouse, drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. I want to know who's up at 2 a.m. for this one, and who's watching on their lunch break pretending to work. Let me know down below, and let's keep going. Naomi took the A train. Not because she couldn't afford a cab. Joon-ho had offered to send a car, 3 separate texts, each one slightly less formal than the last, which told her more about his state of mind than anything he'd actually said. She took the train because she needed the 40 minutes, needed the noise and the motion and the strangers who didn't know her name or her business. She held her bag on her lap the whole ride. Inside it, the envelope, still unopened. The Shin penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a building on West 57th Street that didn't have a sign out front because the kind of people who lived there already knew where it was. The doorman nodded at Naomi like she'd never left. The elevator required a key card. The ride up took 45 seconds. She counted. Old habit. The doors opened directly into the foyer, and before Naomi had taken a single step forward, something small and fast crossed the room and hit her at knee level. Mia, both arms locked around Naomi's legs, face pressed into her thigh. Not crying, just holding on with the total unself-conscious commitment that only very small children and people who've stopped caring what they look like can manage. Naomi reached down and put her hand on top of Mia's head. "Hey, baby," she said quietly. Mia didn't answer, just tightened her grip. From across the room, Shin Joon-ho watched this. He was standing near the window in a dark suit, no tie, top button open, which Naomi had learned over 14 months in this household was the closest the man got to casual. His face was doing the thing it always did when he didn't know what to do with what he was feeling. Going very still, very careful. He looked, she thought, like a man who had just realized he'd been holding his breath for a long time. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I came for her," Naomi said. Not unkind, just clear. Something moved across his face. He nodded once. "I know." She fed Mia first. That wasn't a discussion. She simply walked to the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, found the sweet potatoes, and started cooking. Mia sat on the counter the way she always had. Naomi had started that habit in month 2, when she realized Mia would eat almost anything if she felt like she'd helped make it. She handed Mia a wooden spoon to hold. That was the whole job, just holding the spoon. Mia held it with great seriousness. Ms. Park appeared in the kitchen doorway at some point, watched for a moment, then quietly withdrew. Joon-ho stood at the kitchen island. He didn't speak while Naomi cooked, didn't offer to help. He just stood there with his hands flat on the marble counter, watching his daughter eat, slowly at first, then faster, then with the focused urgency of someone making up for lost time. Half the bowl, then the whole bowl. Then Mia looked up at Naomi and said, "More?" Naomi laughed. It was the first time Joon-ho had heard that sound in this kitchen in a very long time. He looked away, jaw tight, swallowed something down. He asked Ms. Park to take Mia to the playroom. Then he and Naomi sat at the dining table, and he told her the truth, or the version of the truth he had access to. That Ye-rin had recommended the change, that he'd agreed without asking questions, that he had assumed, in the way powerful people assume things, that a decision made by someone close to him was therefore a good one. "She told me you weren't the right fit," he said. "She told you that," Naomi said. What did she mean by it? Joon-ho was quiet for a moment. "I didn't ask," he said. "I know you didn't." That landed. She watched it land. She wasn't trying to wound him. She just wasn't going to sand the edges off the truth to make it easier to hold. He looked at her directly then. "What does that mean?" "It means your sister has been in this apartment 3 times since I started working here. Mia hid behind my leg every single time. And I always thought it was just shyness." Naomi set her hands on the table. "But the week before I was let go, I noticed something. Ms. Park, your new nanny, she wasn't reporting to you. Every evening, around 9, she made one call. Always the same number. Always about 15 minutes. I didn't think much of it at first. People call their families." Joon-ho's expression shifted. Subtle, but she caught it. "Then I realized," Naomi continued, "she was reporting to Ye-rin, Mia's sleep schedule. What she ate, what she said during the day, whether she'd asked about her mother." She paused. "Whether she'd asked about me." The room went very quiet. Outside, 61 floors below, Manhattan kept moving. Sirens, wind, the low, constant hum of 8 million people going about their lives. Up here, the silence had weight. "Why would she want to know that?" Joon-ho said. His voice had gone low, controlled. The voice he used in boardrooms right before someone lost their position. "That," Naomi said, "is a question you need to ask her." She reached into her bag. Put the envelope on the table between them. "I found this in Mia's room 3 weeks before I was fired," she said. "Inside a board book on the bottom shelf. It has my name on it. I don't know who put it there, I didn't open it." Joon-ho stared at it. His face changed in a way Naomi hadn't seen before. The control didn't slip, it simply became irrelevant, like a wall that stops mattering once you've seen what's behind it. "That's my wife's handwriting," he said. Naomi said nothing. He didn't move for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and turned the envelope over. On the back, sealed with a small piece of tape, was a sticker, a yellow daisy, the kind that came in the sheets Mia used for her craft projects. Someone had opened this envelope before. and resealed it. Joon-ho peeled the tape back carefully, unfolded the single page inside. Naomi watched his eyes move across the lines, watched his jaw tighten, watched something cold and certain settle into the set of his shoulders. The particular stillness of a man who has just had a suspicion confirmed that he'd been hoping was wrong. He set the letter down, looked at Naomi. Her name was Yoonji, he said. My wife. She was Black Korean. Her mother was from Atlanta. He stopped, started again. She hired you. 18 months before she died. She found your name through a pediatric nursing network, interviewed you herself, and set everything up. She just never told me she'd done it. Naomi felt something drop through her. She also never told Ye-rin, Joon-ho said. My sister found out 2 weeks after the funeral, and she's been trying to remove you ever since. Okay, I need to pause right here, because the letter hasn't been read aloud yet, and we still don't know everything that's in it. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching this and what time it is for you right now. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Let's keep going. He called Ye-rin that evening. Didn't tell her why. Just said, come to the penthouse, tonight. The tone he used left no room for negotiation. And Ye-rin, whatever else she was, knew her brother's voices. She arrived at 8 p.m. exactly. That was the first tell. Ye-rin was never on time. She arrived early to important things and late to things she wanted to seem unbothered by. Exactly on time meant she'd been sitting in the car downstairs, composing herself, deciding who she was going to be when she walked through that door. She walked in and saw Naomi. A half-second pause, then the smile. Naomi, I didn't realize you'd be joining us. Sit down, Ye-rin, Joon-ho said. She sat, crossed her ankles, set her bag on the chair beside her with the particular care of someone making sure they had an exit within reach. Joon-ho put the letter on the table. Ye-rin looked at it for 3 full seconds before she looked at him. That pause told him everything. She already knew what it said. You opened it, he said. Appa. Before you say anything. His voice was quiet, surgical. I want you to think carefully about what you're about to tell me, because I already know the answer. I just want to hear you say it out loud. Ye-rin's jaw tightened. She looked at the letter, then at Naomi, then back at her brother, and something shifted in her face. The composed version of herself loosening at the edges, the real version pressing through. Ioma told me, she said finally, after the funeral. She said Yoonji had hired someone, an American, without telling anyone, without asking the family. Her voice was careful, measured. She said it needed to be handled. Handled, Joon-ho repeated. You were not in a position to make decisions. You weren't sleeping. You weren't eating. You were running the company on 4 hours a night and refusing to speak to anyone about what you were going through. Ye-rin leaned forward. Someone had to think about Mia. Someone was, Naomi said. Her name was Yoonji. Ye-rin's eyes moved to Naomi slowly. When she spoke, her voice didn't rise. That was almost worse than if it had. You have to understand something, she said. Our mother came to this country with $40 and a suitcase. She built this family's name from nothing, from absolutely nothing, in a city that did not want her here. Every decision she made, every sacrifice, every connection she cultivated, all of it was so that Joon-ho and I would never have to feel what she felt walking into a room and being looked through. She stopped. Yoonji understood that. Yoonji had fought her own version of that battle. She knew what it cost. And she still, her voice caught, just slightly. She still made choices at the end that our mother felt were what? Joon-ho said. Ye-rin looked at her hands. Ioma's word was careless, she said quietly. I don't think that was the right word, but I understood what she meant. Yoonji was gone, and the question of who raised Mia, what she looked like to the board, to the family, to the community we'd spent 30 years building, that question didn't disappear just because Yoonji had already decided the answer. The room was very quiet. Naomi kept her hands flat on the table. She'd heard versions of this her whole life. The argument that wasn't about hate, It was about strategy, about image, about the careful mathematics of survival that some families had mistaken so long for wisdom that they couldn't tell the difference anymore. "Can I say something?" Naomi said. Ye-rin looked at her, a slight lift of the chin, bracing. "Your mother built something real," Naomi said. "I'm not dismissing that. What she survived, what she built, that's not nothing. That's everything." She paused. But somewhere between surviving and arriving, the thing she was protecting stopped being her children and started being her reputation. And you learned that from her the way children learn everything, without knowing you were learning it. She looked at Ye-rin steadily. Yoonji knew it too. That's why she didn't ask permission. She knew what the answer would be. Ye-rin stared at her. For a moment, just a moment, something moved across her face that wasn't composure or strategy or rehearsed calm. Something that looked like the beginning of a question she hadn't let herself ask yet. Then it closed. "I was protecting this family," she said. "You were protecting a version of this family," Joon-ho said, "that Yoonji had already decided to change." He picked up the letter. She wrote it in here. She knew Mia would grow up between two worlds, Korean and Black American, and she didn't want her to spend her life managing that. She wanted her to inhabit it. He looked at his sister. She hired Naomi because Naomi could teach her that. Not Korean language lessons, not the right schools, that. Ye-rin said nothing. "You had Ms. Park report to you every evening," Joon-ho continued. 9 p.m. call, 15 minutes. Mia's meals, her sleep, what she said during the day, whether she asked about her mother, his voice dropped, whether she asked about Naomi. "You used my daughter as leverage, against me, in my own home. I was trying to, I know what you were trying to do." He stood. "You were trying to build a case. For what? Custody concerns? Intervention? Some argument to bring to the board that my household was unstable?" He looked at her with something that wasn't anger. It was sadder than anger. "I've been so busy running the company that you thought you could manage me like a subsidiary." Ye-rin stood slowly. She didn't look at Naomi again. At the elevator she stopped, her back still to the room. "Yoonji called me," she said quietly. 3 weeks before she died. She told me what she was planning. She asked me to support it." A pause. "I told her I would think about it." She pressed the button. I never called her back. The doors opened. She stepped in. Closed. The penthouse was very still. Naomi exhaled slowly through her nose. Joon-ho stood at the table for a long moment, the letter in his hand. Then he folded it once, carefully, and placed it in his inside jacket pocket, against his chest, where he would keep it. From the hallway, a small voice. "Naomi?" They both turned. Mia was standing at the edge of the room in her pajamas, the ones with the little strawberries, holding her stuffed rabbit by one ear. She looked at Naomi, then at her father, then back at Naomi. "You staying?" she asked. Naomi looked at Joon-ho. He looked back at her. "That's up to Naomi," he said. And for the first time since she'd arrived, his voice didn't sound like a man running a meeting. It sounded like someone who understood that the most important decisions in his life had been made by the people around him. His wife, his daughter, and now, maybe, this woman standing in his dining room who had shown up anyway. For a child who needed her. Mia was still waiting. Naomi picked up her bag from the chair. "Put it back down." "Yeah, baby," she said. "I'm staying." She stayed in the guest room that night. The one down the hall from Mia's, with the window that faced east and caught the morning light first. Naomi had never been in that room before. 14 months in this penthouse, and she'd always had the staff quarters on the lower level. Small room. One window facing a wall. She didn't say anything about the upgrade. Just set her bag on the chair, sat on the edge of the bed, and listened to the city 40 floors below doing what New York always did, refusing to be quiet, refusing to be still, moving through the night like it had somewhere to be. She thought about Yoonji, a woman she'd never met, a woman who had found her name in a database, called her, interviewed her for 45 minutes over video, and hired her. all while managing a terminal diagnosis, a grieving husband, and a daughter not yet 2 years old. A woman who had thought far enough ahead to write a letter, seal it, and hide it somewhere she knew Mia would eventually find it. Or someone would. Naomi pressed her hand flat against the bedspread. She trusted me with her child before she even met me in person. That thought sat heavy and warm in her chest, like something she hadn't known she was waiting to feel. 3 weeks passed. Quiet weeks, mostly. The kind that don't make good stories but make good lives. Mia ate, slept, rebuilt her foam block towers and knocked them down and rebuilt them again. She started asking Naomi to read the same book every night. A worn picture book about a bear who gets lost in a city and finds his way home by following the smell of his mother's cooking. The spine was cracked. Several pages had crayon on them. Naomi read it every night without complaint. On the 14th night, halfway through the book, Mia looked up and said, "My mommy picked you." Naomi stopped reading. "Yes," she said carefully. "She did." Mia nodded, satisfied, like this confirmed something she'd already worked out. Then she pointed at the page. "Keep reading." Naomi kept reading. Joon-ho started coming home earlier. Not dramatically, not all at once. But Naomi noticed, 7 p.m. instead of 9, then 6:30. One Tuesday he was home at 5:45 and stood in the kitchen doorway looking slightly lost, like a man who had arrived somewhere before he'd figured out what to do when he got there. Mia solved that problem immediately by handing him a foam block and pointing at the floor. He sat down in his suit on the playroom rug and built towers with his daughter for 40 minutes. Naomi watched from the doorway. She wasn't cataloging it or analyzing it. She was just watching. The way you watch something you weren't sure you'd ever get to see. He found her on the terrace 11 days later. Not that evening. Not the next morning. 11 days of careful, quiet normalcy. Mia eating, sleeping, rebuilding her towers. Before Joon-ho appeared in the terrace doorway at 9 p.m. with 2 cups of tea and the expression of a man who had been rehearsing something and had decided to stop rehearsing. Naomi took the cup. They stood at the railing. The park below was a dark shape against the lit grid of the city, holding its ground the way green things do in New York, stubbornly, against all reasonable odds. He didn't speak for a while. She let him not speak. "I've been going through her things," he said finally. "Yoonji's. In 2 years I hadn't touched the boxes in the storage room. I kept telling myself I was waiting for the right time." He looked at the park. "There is no right time. I was just waiting to be less afraid." Naomi said nothing. "She kept a journal," he said. "Not the whole marriage, just the last 8 months." He paused. "She wrote about you. 4 separate entries. She'd never met you in person, just the video call. But she wrote about you the way she wrote about things she was certain of." He turned his cup in his hands. She wrote, "Naomi Reeves has the kind of stillness that Mia will understand before she has words for it. She'll know she's safe. That's the only credential that matters." Naomi's grip on her cup tightened slightly. "She was wrong about one thing," Naomi said. Joon-ho looked at her. "She said I have stillness." Naomi kept her eyes on the park. "But I cried on the A train the day I left. Ugly cried. Stranger handed me a napkin. I was not still at all." Something shifted in his face. Not a smile, something quieter. Recognition. "She also wrote," he said, "that she was afraid I would be the obstacle." Not Ye-rin. Me. He said it without flinching. That I would be so deep inside my grief that I would let people make decisions for Mia and call it delegation. That I would mistake movement for presence. He set his cup on the railing. "She knew me very well. She loved you very well," Naomi said. "Those aren't always the same thing. She knew you and loved you. That's harder." Joon-ho turned to look at her then. Really look. The way he hadn't allowed himself to until now. "I fired you," he said. "Without a conversation. Without asking a single question. You gave my daughter 14 months of your life, and I ended it with an envelope." "You did," Naomi said. I'm not going to ask you to forget that. Good, because I won't. I'm asking you to let me be someone different than the man who did that. He said it carefully. Not a plea, a statement of intent. The way he made decisions in boardrooms, except this time his voice had the slight unevenness of something real moving underneath it. Not for the company, not for the family name, for that little girl in there who called your number 7 times in the dark. He paused. And for myself, I'd like to be present for my own life. I'm not sure I know how yet, but I'd like to try. Naomi looked at him for a long moment. The city moved below them. November whined off the park, cold and clean. Somewhere down on the street, a cab honked twice and went quiet. Yoonji picked well, Naomi said finally. Joon-ho blinked. The journal? No. Naomi picked up her cup. She picked well. He was quiet for a moment. His throat moved. One condition, Naomi said. Name it. You read Mia the Bear book, not me. You. Every night you're home. The one with the cracked spine. She'll correct you if you skip a word. She already does it to me. She will have no mercy. This time the smile came without hesitation. Not the boardroom version. Not the polished social one. The real thing, slightly uneven, unfamiliar on his face, like a muscle remembering how to work. I'll practice, he said. Naomi shook her head slowly, almost to herself, picked up her tea, looked at the park, stayed. 2 months later, Ye-rin called. Naomi didn't know about the call at first. She found out because Joon-ho told her. That same evening, sitting across from her at the kitchen island while Mia slept, like it was information she was entitled to have. That small gesture told her more about how much had changed than anything else could have. Ye-rin had not apologized. Not exactly, she had said, and Joon-ho repeated this carefully, making sure to get the words right. I think I confused protecting the family with protecting myself. I'm not ready to say more than that yet. Naomi sat with that for a moment. That's more than I expected, she said honestly. More than I expected, too, he said. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't resolution. It was the first crack of light under a closed door, which is, if you're being honest, how most real things begin. On a Sunday in October, the 3 of them went to Central Park. Joon-ho wore a jacket that was not a suit jacket, which Mia found interesting enough to point at and say, different. Naomi packed the bag, sweet potato snacks, the stuffed rabbit, 2 juice boxes, and the bear book, because Mia had insisted and Naomi had learned not to argue with her about books. They found a spot near the water. Mia ran toward the ducks with the absolute fearlessness of someone who has never been told to be careful near water and doesn't intend to start listening now. Joon-ho moved to follow her. Naomi caught his arm. She's okay, Naomi said. Just watch. He stopped, watched. Mia reached the edge of the path, looked at the ducks, looked back at them, checking, the way she always did, that they were still there. Then turned back to the ducks and began a very serious one-sided conversation. Joon-ho exhaled, let his shoulders drop. Stood in the October light next to Naomi Reeves and watched his daughter talk to ducks, and did not check his phone, and did not think about the Singapore office, and did not move fast enough to outrun anything. Just stood there, present, still, accounted for. Later, on the walk back, Mia reached up with both hands, not to Naomi, not to Joon-ho, to both of them, 1 hand each. She didn't say anything. She just held on and walked between them through the falling October leaves like it was the most natural arrangement in the world, because to her, it was. She had decided it, the way she'd decided everything that mattered in this story, from the very beginning. A 3-year-old girl who couldn't pronounce spaghetti but could navigate a contact list, make 7 phone calls, and refuse to eat until the people around her started paying attention. Yoonji had named her Mia, mine. But maybe what she'd really meant was something closer to ours. A child who belonged to a story larger than one family, one culture, one grief. A child who had reached across every wall the adults had built and simply refused to let go. Some people spend their whole lives learning what that little girl already knew. Hold on. Don't let go. The right people will find their way back. And that's the end of this one. I want to know, did you see the letter twist coming? Or did it catch you? Drop it in the comments. And if you watched this whole thing and felt something, whether it was 2 a.m. and you can't sleep, or your lunch break ran 20 minutes long, that means this story did what it was supposed to do. So if you're new here, subscribe. We do this every week. And if you've been here a while, share this one. Send it to somebody who needs a story about a little girl who refused to give up on the people she loved. We'll see you in the next one.